Sounds like somebody is just super excited about regenerative farming. Hey there folks, this is Josh, Stoney Ridge Farmer. Welcome back to another gorgeous day here in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. We're on the Stoney Ridge Farm, and by popular request, I'm doing this video. I've had many questions from people trying to understand what the difference is between conventional farming practice and regenerative farming practice. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about what I'm doing here on the land here in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, this worn out, overgrown, overused, no topsoil farm that we're turning into a regenerative farm / regenerative ranch. So come along today as we discuss what regenerative farming is versus what conventional farming might be, okay? And there's some crossover. No farmer doesn't care about his land. All farmers care about their land, all farmers care about their crops, all farmers care about their animals, but there are certain things that have been going on for years and years now that aren't regenerative, that don't build soil, that break down soil. So let's talk a little bit about this as we're out here with the cows, grazing in the weed patch. All right, woo! Folks, welcome to the Stoney Ridge Farm. If this is your first time here, please jump in, pound the like button, consider subscribing to the farm channel. This is all about regenerative farming and or tool reviews and tractors and all sorts of fun stuff. But today we're talking about farming, we're talking about the land, and we're talking about the soil. So this land that I bought here in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains / Piedmont region, so we're right on the edge of the foothills versus the Piedmont, was over-farmed. It was over-farmed. That's why people moved out west to like Missouri. They moved to the Midwest like Ohio because they had topsoil. All the topsoil around here is gone. Where did it go? What happened to it? Tillage is what happened to it. So the land got turned, and this is just a very hard cycle for us to break here in this area. I mean, people still to this day tell me, oh, that land sure will grow something. You need to turn that land. You need to get out there with that plow and you need to turn that land. What we're talking about is regenerative farming and regenerative agriculture. We're not talking about growing one crop. We're talking about a multi-species pasture. We're talking about multiple species of plant, animal, and fungus in the soil. So conventional farming methods, even in an organic setting, it doesn't matter. If you're tilling up the soil, what you're doing is turning under all that biologic material down into the soil, and you're baking, absolutely roasting whatever microbes might have been working their way down deep into the soil. That's why there are 6 feet of topsoil in some places out west, out in the Great Plains area. That was the way it was. Now we look back at history and we think about the Dust Bowl. When we turned this land that was never turned before, and we had a dry spell and the winds picked up, the most devastating natural disaster in the history of the United States was the Dust Bowl. That took the most lives. It's amazing to even think that. When we talk about regenerative farming, what we're talking about is a biodiverse soil. We're not farming grass. We're not growing a monocrop. We're growing animals here on this farm, and those animals are ruminant animals. Those animals will graze, they will trample with their hooves, they will stimulate the soil. Out their butt comes that awesome butt fertilizer, which feeds worms, which feeds microbes, which feeds fungus, and that's what helps to build the soil. So that's what we mean when we talk about a regenerative farm. So the elephant in the room is tillage, guys. Tillage is going over the soil and destroying an ecosystem. So when you go over soil like this and you turn under all the plants and all the biodiversity and you expose that soil to the sun's rays, you're basically sterilizing most of the soil. What we've learned over years and years is this is not the way to stimulate soil growth. And what that does, when you till this up and you plant your crops, you're planting a monocrop. In other words, rows of corn. It's all corn, okay? If you're using a no-till method, awesome. If you're using cover crops, awesome, because you're keeping root structure in the soil, you're keeping the microbes, you're keeping the earthworms, and you're keeping water. When you do a tillage and you do a monocrop situation, what you're doing is turning the soil under, planting one single crop, and it's very chemical intensive. In other words, when you expose soil, what you do is invite weeds to grow. Those weeds are weeds similar to what we have right here. This soil was exposed 2 years ago. And you can see all these weeds. This is dog fennel. The cows are out here grazing hay bales that I'm rolling out on the land. That hay bale is serving as a bed of mulch to allow moisture and earthworms and microbes and fungi to take a hold of this soil and to rebuild it. So what we have to think of is our soil not as a means to an end. In other words, not as a place to drop a corn seed in or a soybean seed in or whatever seed it might be that you're growing in. I'm not against any crop. It's all about preserving the microbes and the ecosystem in the soil and or promoting the growth of that ecosystem. So with these cows, these are ruminant animals right here. They're consuming grass, they're turning it into a usable product, which is beef, and the secondary usable byproduct is the urine and the feces. So the urine and feces that comes out of these animals is just about pH neutral. We have to think about what wants to grow where. A tree will not grow in a battery. In other words, a very acidic situation is what we have here on this farm. We've got a lot of broom straw. A lot of people say, well, you need to put lime down on that soil. You need to do this. You need to put this down. You need to put that down. We're talking about throwing money at it and hoping that that's going to solve the problem. A lot of the old-time farmers around here told me, you know what you need to do? You got to get out there and you need to turn that land. You need to turn it and then plant your grass seed and then put down a bunch of fertilizer. We'll put down $20,000 worth of fertilizer and lime on a 15-acre piece of land, and in a year and a half, it's going to look exactly the same as it does right now versus trying to bring in biodiversity, earthworms. We want to bring legumes in like clover. We want to plant like soybean. We want to plant anything and everything that's going to bring biologic material to the soil and bring up that pH and bring up that carbonaceous material that's in the soil that feeds the earthworms, feeds the microbes, and underneath our feet, in most cases, are piles and piles, tons and tons of earthworms and microbes and fungi that are helping to regenerate the soil. There are some microbes out there that will actually pull water to the plant. They'll actually pull nitrogen to the plant. If you pull up a clover plant, you pull it up in the summertime, it's got flowers on it. On the bottom of that clover plant will be nodules that fix nitrogen. So what I'm saying is, fixing nitrogen, pulling nitrogen from the sky to the soil, from the soil back up, conserving water. It's definitely a less water intensive situation when you have bedding down on your grass. That's why if you go plant grass in your yard, you spread straw out over top of it because it retains that moisture and allows that grass to take hold. So a lot of conventional farming methods are all about produce the crop, produce the crop, produce the crop. I get it, I get it. And can this be done? Can no-till be done all over the world? Yes, it can be done all over the world. Do people believe it, or are people fearful of changing their farming practices? I think that people believe it, I think they believe in it, but I think they've been so set in their ways, in their practices for so many years and so many generations that they forget about the common sense part of soil. Soil is what grows, not fertilizer. You throw fertilizer down, of course your plant's gonna grow. Say I plant a row of corn out here and I dump 10-10-10 or 15-15-15 fertilizer out here on the soil. Of course it's gonna grow, but is that what you want to eat? Is it? Is that sterilizing the land? What is that doing? What is that doing for the soil? So that's what regenerative farming is all about. The practice of building soil to harbor those beneficial insects, those beneficial legumes, those beneficial plants, and the beneficial butt fertilizer that we get out of our cows. Let's talk a little bit more. So now let's talk about regenerative cattle farming, ruminant animals. Whether you've got sheep, whether you've got goats, whether you've got pigs, let's talk about that. So in a typical farm situation, these animals graze. they'll be put, these are 31 cows right here. They'll be put out on a field that's say 15 acres or so, and the grass will grow. Okay, so the grass grows up about this high, the cow eats it down to that high. It grows up this high, they eat it down to that high. What we have to think about is the way things used to work in nature. You think about the herds of bison that used to cover the Great Plains states of North America. Those herds of bison didn't stay in one spot until all the grass was gone. They constantly moved, just like deer. They're browsers, they browse through. Now, if you confine them to a really tight space, you're gonna get overgrazing, and overgrazing causes desertification. Desertification, in other words, taking this landscape and turning it into a desert. There's a reason we're down here in the most weed-covered pasture that I have on the farm, because those weeds are preventing desertification. I'm unrolling hay bales on a daily basis out here all winter long, and what those cows are doing are trampling that hay into the soil. So probably 1/10 of each bale, which is absolutely jam-packed with different types of grass seed, legume seeds, wild grasses, native grasses, all sorts of stuff. All that is being consumed and trampled into the ground, creating bedding for worms, microbes, and your wonderful fungi. Now, fungus is something that's instrumental to soil growth, guys. So what we have to think about when we're growing animals like these cows right here, these are Black Angus beef cows, what we have to think about is an intensive grazing and mob grazing atmosphere. We want to move these cows. Evidently, they're doing the reverse hump back there. We want to move these cows to small plots of land on a daily basis before they have time to overgraze. So when they overgraze, they don't give the grass chance to recover. So grass grows like this. When it first starts out as little bitty baby grass, it grows really, really slow. Then it hits a growth spurt, kind of like a teenager, and that's that teenage grass. It hits that growth spurt, and then it starts to fruit out. In other words, it shoots a seed head out and turns into grandpa grass or adult grass. That seed head grows up, spits out the seed, and the grass growth stops. So what the entire goal of regenerative farming and regenerative agriculture with animals like this is to move those animals prior to that grass hitting that bolt stage. In other words, it'll go and it'll put out a seed head. And then once it puts out the seed head, that stem dries and it turns to grandpa grass and it dies and it doesn't grow. So we've got to keep our cows moving through the farm in different small paddocks. So we've got 31 cows here. We can put them on 1 acre or 3/4 to 1.5 acre paddocks. We let them graze, but we don't let them eat it all the way down to this high. We want to keep it up about this high so that the grass stays in the teenage grass years, the growth spurt years, okay? So if we eat it all the way down to it being that tall, it recovers very, very slowly. If we eat it down to about right here, to the teenage years, it recovers again and recovers again and recovers again. So by the time you've rotated your cows through your farm all summer, spring, summer, and fall, you have gotten at least 1 acre of grazing per day, and you've brought your cows back through and you've kept your grass in the teenage growth spurt years, okay? What does that do? That stimulates growth above ground and below ground, okay? So they're not only teenagers up here, they're also teenagers setting down roots. So these are things that you need to think about when you're raising animals and when you're putting them out on pasture like this. Now, there's a different game that we play in the wintertime here on the Stoney Ridge farm. I don't cut hay off the farm. I don't take nutrient from my farm and spread it out just yet because the soil is just not healthy enough. The goal is to intensively graze and mob graze and move these animals, saving enough pasture for springtime growth, okay? And saving enough pasture so we have stockpiled forage so these cows can continue to get good green forage throughout the winter, okay? So that's what regenerative farming is in a nutshell for here on the Stoney Ridge farm. Now there's also regenerative farming in the forest, okay? So we've got a section over here of what we would call silvopasture. It's a multi-species pasture in the forest, okay guys? So you want your cows to not be on a monocrop or a monoculture. They can't eat all clover. They can't eat all fescue. They need a variety of grasses, just like you. If you love lasagna, but if you ate lasagna every single day, you wouldn't be healthy. Nor would these cows be healthy if every day they ate the same darn thing. You gotta think about that. Every day coming out of the butt of these cows is about 50 pounds of biodiverse, rich manure. Now what I do on my farm, we don't worm our cows. We keep our cows moving. We keep them away from the manure. If you keep the cows away from the manure, keep them moving, the fly load is less, the manure load is high, the soil gets plenty of nutrient, and we also drag our pastures after the cows move. Eventually, we'll be bringing chickens in to actually do all of the mechanical work of spreading that manure out. So there's a lot of science that goes into regenerative farming. If you guys are considering regenerative farming, please jump in, ask any question that you might have. If you're farming conventionally right now, please talk to me. Tell me about what you're doing. Just because Grandpa Bill did it, Great-Grandpa Bill did it, and Great-Grandpa Bill before him did it, doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do for your soil. Now, I'm not, I'll tell you this, I'm a farmer. I'm not a leftist or a rightist or pushing any sort of political agenda here. All I'm telling you is building soil for your farm saves time, saves money, is better for the land, better for the environment, and a better ecosystem for healthier, better animals. Now, that also works for healthier and better and more nutrient-dense food and crops. So we'll be out in the garden this year. We're gonna be having a lot of fun building soil in the garden. We're building soil here. I'm a soil farmer, not a cattle farmer, not a beet farmer, not a squash farmer, soil farmers. So that's it. That's what you guys need to know about regenerative agriculture here on the Stoney Ridge Farm. A lot of folks have asked. That's a tiny, tiny little snippet of what regenerative agriculture is. If any of you guys know of any books or any readings or any videos or anything that you'd like to share with us, please post it down there in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Welcome to the Stoney Ridge Farm. Please hit that like button if you like this kind of stuff, and please leave any sort of comment that you might have. If you post something hateful, I'm just going to delete it, so you might as well not. But if you post an educated argument, I'll definitely respond to you. If you post something that tells me, hey, we've been doing this, teach me, teach us all. We're a community of people that want to do the right thing for our animals and for our land. Guys, thanks a lot for joining me here on the Stoney Ridge Farm today. I hope you learned a little bit. There's tons of information out there about regenerative farming, regenerative ranching. So please do your research, learn a little bit, and come on back to the Stoney Ridge and we'll show you what we're doing here to make this weed go away and turn it into awesome, beautiful pasture for our cows. Cool? See y'all next time. Take care. Woo! Come on down to the Stoney Ridge. Bring your wife and bring your kids. We're living life pure and sweet. That's the way it's supposed to be, Stoney Ridge. Woo! What about as all about? About and about, could it be about being about a regular commercial river basin?